Danny Flexon here for Seconds Out with Matt Hodgson, the director of I Am Duran, which we just had the pleasure of watching an initial screening of here in London. Just tell us first of all, so many big stars of that era boxing-wise, why Duran out of, say, the Four Kings, for example?
Well, Duran is, to us, felt like the odd one out in many ways. He's the non-American. And, you know, there's so much love for Duran from boxing fans, almost non-boxing fans as well, seem to identify with him. So we just wanted to look into his story, really. But that wasn't enough. We wanted to look at whether there was another layer. And when we sort of tapped into the history of Panama and the duality of his career, the ups and downs, and that seemed to be running directly alongside the ups and downs of the country at the time, we felt like there's a really interesting story here to tell. So, yeah, I mean, Duran sort of had a bigger package for us, maybe.
He was obviously very aware of his special relationship he had with the Panamanian people. One thing that struck me while I was watching it, and this is something I wanted to ask you when we got the chance, how aware do you feel he was of the wider kind of context and the political side of what was going on at the time between the US and Panama?
I think that, like many sportsmen, they're sort of reluctant heroes. So they're attuned to a public who are looking at them for inspiration and hope, but it's not necessarily something that they're craving themselves. It's almost a byproduct of their successes and their career. So I think when it comes to what he offered the Panamanian people, he would have been very proud, but I don't think that would have been his motivation. And I don't think, well, I know this because I've spoken to Roberto, he doesn't necessarily see how he's been so significant for his country, but other people do. And I think that's also down to his humility as well. He doesn't present himself as this kind of godlike figure in Panama necessarily. He had moments where he had those peaks. But when he looks back on his career and his legacy, I think it's for other people to say rather than Roberto, and that's maybe what this film is doing.
And also, how much of his popularity back home do you think is down to kind of the political aspect, and how much is down to just him being a man of the people achieving things on the world stage?
I think that a lot of it is down to both. His popularity is down to both of those things. So for me, he came along at the right time when Panama needed a hero. Now, you're not just talking any hero like a great baseball player or something diluted in a team or etc. You're talking about a boxer, a one-man sport, and he was the best in his weight class for so many years in boxing. So that obviously made people identify with him from the Panamanian public. But then you sort of mix that in with the fact that the political state of the country was so tumultuous, and they needed that icon. So I think that his popularity was sort of twofold in those ways, both as a sportsman, but then what it enabled the people, you know, during those horrible years for them.
Well, especially when Panama as a country seemed to be kind of under the yoke of US imperialism to an extent, and you had Roberto Duran going over to America and to Canada and beating the American heroes. There must have been that sort of element to it, I guess, as well.
Yeah, I mean, when we sort of hit upon this story, it was one of the first things that really sprang out. It's like there's literally you got a guy going and fighting on American soil when there was fighting with Americans on his home soil. So there was a very obvious correlation and comparison there. So, you know, I think that's definitely something that punches through in the film about it's more than just a fighter going and fighting all over the world. He was beating Americans, and there was some significance to that because there was a lot of resentment between the Panamanians and the Americans at the time. Tension. It's not like there was a right or wrong about it. It was just a lot of tension. It was a complicated situation, politically really complicated, and he allowed people to release that tension and anxiety they felt about America at the time.
What's the reaction been to the film back in Panama?
Well, the reaction in Panama has been amazing. I mean, I suppose it's the one place you can expect a slam dunk for the film because it's their favourite son, you're telling their story, they all identify with it. And the best thing about it, the reaction I've received in Panama, because I was over there last week, was people feel that we've told the story in a really balanced and respectful manner, and that was something we identified early on that we have to do. We have to make this so that Panamanian, I'm an English guy, you know, I live in England, a Panamanian will look at our story we're told and say, yeah, that's correct, you know, you got that right. And most people have said you hit it bang on, nailed on with the way that you've treated the nuances of the politics, the situation at the time. You've not really taken sides necessarily. So that's the most pleasing thing about the feedback there.
And just before we let you go, obviously this is out June 3rd for digital download. What's the next project in the works? Is it boxing related? Is there anything you can tell us about?
Next project in the works, it's a sort of Projects never really get up and running until quite long down the line. But we've done some filming with Eric Cantona for a project with him and Manchester United. So watch this space, I guess.
Brilliant. Well, Matt Hodgson, you've done a great piece of work. Really enjoyed it, and we thank you for your time.